Wonderful.
Mr. Wonderful.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
How you feeling? You came up with your own camera setup, his own setup. You came prepared.
I don't mess around, man.
Now, do you own any of these products?
These are all Apple. I own the stock.
Okay.
Oh, you understand?
You very popular, man. All day long, people have been saying, Mr. Wonderful's coming up here.
That's right.
Well, I appreciate that. There's truth in advertising.
So let's talk about Shark Tank. Now, you've been in Shark Tank for how long now?
14 seasons. We're all amazed by what this has turned into. It's fantastic.
Do you still love it, and does it allow you to do your real job or all the other things that you have to do?
Well, it's turned into my real job. I mean, we've been investing in companies now, dozens of them, if not, 50, 60, 70 each. And some of them have been wildly successful. I mean, it is the American dream. That's what happens when you get a hit. And here's what I've learned. You don't know what's going to work. You may think you do.
That's right.
But each season, the deals that I think are real dogs end up being huge hits and vice versa. You just don't know. So you need a portfolio. You need to do, 10, 12 deals, hoping 2 or 3 really work out and pay for the mistakes.
That's all you can hope to do, right? I mean, it's all a gamble at the end of the day.
It is, and it's remarkable to see, particularly during the pandemic, how these entrepreneurs pivoted, how they just had to chuck and jive to stay alive. I mean, it was really hard because they lost their retail distribution. And most of these companies are consumer goods and services, so if they don't have any distribution, they go to zero. And they figured out how to sell direct. They did, something remarkable. They built businesses direct to consumer all around the world. And they started giving up retail because when you sell direct, your margins are much higher and you get all that information about your customer. Nike did the same thing during the pandemic. They went to 60% direct consumer around the world. So did the Shark Tank companies.
You know what I wondered about certain entrepreneurs during COVID? Certain people created COVID-friendly businesses, things that worked during the pandemic. But were those good long-term things to invest in?
That's a great question. What we found out is that people believe in more than just profits today. If there's a mission behind your business, if it's doing something great, if it's, providing for its community, you tend to get a very sticky customer. And if you're selling direct to them and you can communicate that mission, it outlasts just the pandemic. They feel like they're part of that community and they stay with you. That's what we learned. And so it's not just about making money anymore. That's okay. Profits are still cool, but that's how you stay in business and you hire people. But people want more. They want more. Like a company like Blue Land that took out the plastic waste of cleaning fluids. There's no bottle anymore. It's just a tablet. And people really got into that during the pandemic because they couldn't buy this stuff. You remember, for a while, they'd shut down even Walmart. So if you needed a cleaning fluid, you got it direct from Blue Land. Now they're selling 50, 60 million a year direct to consumers that are into the mission of cleaning up the oceans.
I saw one that you guys did. There was a ring light. Because obviously people, even after the pandemic, ring lights got so popular during, but now I feel like people are never going to stop using ring lights. It's something that...
That's right, and that ring light company made one with a little star in your eye, reflecting in your eye, and I have that thing back.
Wow.
It's so cool. You stick it in front of you, and when you're doing your selfies, there's 2 stars in your eyes. Cool idea.
Right.
I was going to ask, what was the most successful company you invested in Shark Tank?
In the history of the show, the biggest exit, it was one called Plated that was bought by Albertsons for $340 million. That was my deal. And there's about to be another one that'll get announced in the next few weeks. That'll be the second largest. Also my deal. So I'm getting very lucky with these things because, and again, they're ones that I never thought. I mean, this one that's about to happen, I'd love to tell you about it today, but I can't because it's a public company that's buying it, was the stupidest thing I've ever seen. I mean, I couldn't believe what it was, and I did it because I thought it was great TV. But it turned into a monster business, a huge business, and bingo. It's being acquired, and that woman is going to be very, very wealthy.
Now, you said the one you bought for $340,000. What did you want?
Million.
Let's not make that
million.
mistake.
Million.
Sorry.
Million.
Sorry.
We can get in on this.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was. That was. If you remember, there was a time when meal kits, people would ship an uncooked meal to your door, and then you'd cook the food.
Yep,
so it was for portion. That got really big, and that was one of the biggest companies played. It was bought by Albertson because they wanted a digital version to what they did in a grocery store.
Gotcha.
And that was a huge deal, and that's when we began to realize that Shark Tank, the real secret sauce of Shark Tank and why it works year in, year out is The number one reason companies go out of business in America is they can never get their customer acquisition costs below the lifetime value. A fancy way of saying they advertise themselves into bankruptcy. They can't acquire customers. Now, with Shark Tank, you get 100 million eyeballs through syndication.
Right.
So if you even have a mediocre product, you're kicking it when you're on Shark Tank, but you got to get a deal. Everybody thinks you can come on and not close a deal. Then you don't get updates. You don't get the benefit long term. You never show up again. And I think that's kind of what people have figured out about it. If they can get on Shark Tank and get into syndication, they're going to be out there forever.
Now, question, when they come on Shark Tank, let's say they don't get a deal. Does Shark Tank, or do you guys still get some type of percentage if they do so? Because, I mean, you guys are still advertising them on the show.
Yeah, very shrewd question. There was a time when that was happening, but in season 3, we killed that because it stopped good companies from coming on board. If they weren't guaranteed a deal, why are they giving up equity?
Correct.
And so in season 4, we changed that policy, and that's when we started getting real companies with real shareholders, with real venture capitalists. And now we get all kinds of deals. And the deal sizes are huge. They're millions of dollars now. It used to be 50 grand here, 100,000 there. Now it's 2, 3, 4, 5 million bucks.
Do you have any regrets when you look back at maybe talking to a business owner and being really harsh with them? Because sometimes people are so passionate about their businesses, and then you can look back and say, damn, maybe I shouldn't have said it that way.
They say you're the mean guy.
No, I just tell the truth. And if you can't handle the truth, the real world's going to bite your hiney anyway.
But sometimes it's wrong, right?
No, I'm
Like
never
some
wrong.
of those businesses have been successful.
Look, the point is, I just tell it the way I see it. And I think that is important. I think it's very disingenuous. And I say this to Barbara all the time and Lori. You're not going to give these people a dime, and you're telling them to go on and keep doing what they're doing when you know they're going to zero. So why are you doing that? Why don't you tell them the truth? Your idea sucks. It's going to zero. You're going to go bankrupt unless you stop. Go do something else.
But look, the girls from the Lip Bar were on. They're from Detroit, and they were on the show, and their business has been pretty successful, and they're doing well. They're in Target. They're in all these stores.
They rub that in my face even on
all
billboards.
the time. Yep, I saw the billboards in Detroit.
What's
But
the
that-
billboard say?
It says, Mr. Wonderful's wrong.
Yeah, and I just saw those because they had their 10-year anniversary. But that's what I'm saying. Like,
Look, I'm proud of them for taking the heat. I'm proud that they're entrepreneurs that are successful. It's a wonderful thing to see that happen. But they were facing an almost impossible task because going into the cosmetics industry is so difficult to get market share, but they pulled it off. So look, you gotta applaud them. There's no question about it. But that is a tough space because the margins are so high that the competition is brutal. It's just brutal.
What are your thoughts on the metaverse?
So here's a big debate about the metaverse, and I'm pretty heavy into the digital space now because I believe, the people think, let's start at Bitcoin, the granddaddy asset, right? Everybody thinks it's a coin. It's not. It's software. It's software, and software that can have a lot of productivity to it in financial services. The issue about the metaverse is this: what is the business model going to be? Let's say I'm a brand like Procter & Gamble or Nike or a huge global brand, and I want to have my own store in the metaverse. I think that's got to be a curated metaverse. So I'm not being set up beside a porn shop, right? I care about what community I'm in. I care about how my brand's represented. I want some control over that. Then there's the unfettered, uncurated version of the metaverse where anything goes, and that's a different version of it. But I don't think that's going to get as many brands to support it. And then you have to ask yourself, is it an advertising model, or is it a transaction model, or is it both? And these are all unknowns. So Web3 is an unknown. We're in the very first innings of Web3, and you got to place a lot of bets out there, a lot of bets. And so I'm investing in all kinds of companies, not knowing which one's going to be successful, no different than Shark Tank.
Do brands still, care about who buys their products? Because, you talk about being in the metaverse, like, I be thinking sometimes they just want the eyeballs. They just want the engagement. They just want people to see their product. Do they care about who they're really in front of?
That's a great question. But if you've built a brand that is important, that you think means something to somebody, and all of a sudden it's beside a weed shop, you're not cool with that because you've spent billions of dollars promoting whatever your brand is about. So I think you do care. I don't think that's going to change. Probably the platform that everybody hates that has the biggest chance of making it work on a curated basis is going to be Facebook. They've already got 2 billion people, and they're there waiting to see what the next iteration of Meta is going to be. And Facebook's had a rough time, and so have all these stocks. They've been cut in half in some cases. But at the end of the day, who is going to set this up so that it works for both the community and for the brand? Brands aren't going to change. There's certain things you buy because you like the brand.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
I think they're going to be they're going to want to be represented on the Metaverse according to their version of what they are.
You also have a cryptocurrency folder, and people are so concerned about crypto right now and about the prices dropping. So I want to get your thoughts on it because I know it's something that you've put a portion of your assets into.
Yeah. So let's go back to traditional investing. Let's say you're a sovereign wealth fund running $100 billion. That's a small sovereign wealth fund. Here are the rules you'd play by pre-crypto. You'd be no more than 20% in any one sector of the economy. And in our economy, we have 11 sectors, okay? So energy is a sector, so no more than 20% in energy. And then within a sector, no more than 5% in any one stock. That's diversification. That's how it was played. Now, I believe that in the next decade, crypto, blockchain, and all of the productivity that provides will become the 12th sector of the economy. And so there will be many companies that service that 12th sector, but I'm investing according to that kind of metric. I've put 20% of our operating company's portfolio into crypto across 32 different positions.
Wow.
And so I own a lot of different things: Polygon, Helium, Pollen, Solana, Ethereum, Bitcoin, yada, 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 all, and on, not knowing which is going to survive, because I don't know. But if you have enough diversification, you only need one or two to work, and then you're in good shape. And that's the way I think you got to think about crypto. It's just software. These are software developers. There's nothing magical about it. But the reason you should care is that the productivity that it's going to provide. Let's just take, for example, USDC, stablecoin. Yesterday, Circle, the company that issues USDC, closed a deal, first time ever, with Fidelity and BlackRock for $400 million. Those are the most conservative money managers on earth. What are they doing giving $400 million to Circle? Because they figured out that as a payment system, it's far more efficient than transferring between banks, which sucks. It takes days to move money between countries. Sometimes it gets lost. This would all be eradicated with something like USDC pegged to the US dollar. You've got the Senate. You've got Senator Loomis, or you've got Toomey and Haggerty all putting bills forward to support these initiatives. So you got policy coming. I think Fidelity and BlackRock saw the policy, talked to the senators, said, okay, this is going to become legal one day. We want to get ahead of it. And already in stable coins, there's $120 billion right now. And that's before it becomes regulated. So there's a lot of stuff happening here. I'm a big investor. I use Circle. I use the products. Why? Because I can make 4% interest by lending it out with a 30-day note. That makes sense to me. I can't do that in a bank. I'm going to make 40 basis points, and inflation's 6, so I'm losing money putting money in a bank.
Let's talk about inflation a little bit.
Real quick, what's a greater risk asset? Cryptocurrency or NFTs?
That's a great question. I would say there's two types of NFTs, okay? NFTs that are tied to physical assets. Let me give you an example. Here's a watch. I'm a huge watch collector, okay? This is an FP Journe. How do I know it's real? How do I know it's not fake? Rolexes knocked off like crazy. How do I know that? That's NAP. How do I know it's real? If that had an NFT associated with it, with the authenticated papers, an image of the box, the serial number, the caliber, and a high-scanned image of the dial, which has tiny imperfections in it, the fingerprint of it, I wouldn't have to get that authenticated if I bought it from you. You just show me the NFT, I'd rescan the watch. Yeah, it's the original watch. Sure, it's going to have some patina on it, but that NFT is extremely valuable because it represents the physical asset. Now, a lazy ape, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Because I see people are doing it now with homes now. They're doing NFTs with homes and actual products.
Yeah.
Which seems more sensible than, like you said, a lazy ape.
Exactly. So I think you're going to have the scammers in a new space like this. There's no policy. If an NFT has utility, let's say you're getting an NFT and you get tickets to the Formula One race, that sounds like a security to me because it's got something of value associated with it, almost like a dividend. So if you're getting a royalty or something, I think that at some point the regulator is going to say, look, that's a security. You got to have a prospectus with it. But regulation's not a bad thing, and I'll tell you why. Right now, I work in the indexing space for sovereign wealth funds and pension plans. So when they want to design an index, let's say they're an oil-rich country and they want to invest in the S&P, they say, give me the S&P, X oil, and X airlines. I don't want to own any airlines or oil stocks because we already got all the oil we need. So we index. Indexers like me do that for them. They do not own any crypto. Zero. And yet they're running hundreds of billions of dollars If they were allowed to buy Bitcoin, they'd put a 1% weighting in it. Then you'd start to see the value of crypto go up because there'd always be a market bid for it. Right now, there's no bid. There's no institution. It's just everybody thinks, oh, crypto's fantastic. Nobody owns Bitcoin. The truth is most investors don't own it. There's only 800 billion of it, which, by the way, is nothing in financial services. You got to start talking about $5, $6, $7, $8 trillion. You got to get to 12 trillion. And the only way you're going to get that is if it becomes an institutional product.
I was asking before, you mentioned inflation and interest rates. So what are your thoughts on the fact that interest rates are shooting through the roof right now as far as mortgage rates, car loans, and bank loans right now, and inflation? How does that affect what's going on in the next couple of years?
Well, the two biggest moves in inflation are self-inflicted wounds. One is energy costs, $4, $5, $6 gallon of oil or of gas.
Yes,
We did that to ourselves. We shut down all the production. That was not smart. I think we figured that out. We're going to have to solve for that real fast because, you know, if you're looking at the midterm elections, this is a political issue now. In addition to that, food prices, so protein like chicken or, you know, fish or any of that, they're up 30, 40, 50%. That's because supply chain's broken. We can't get stuff from one port to another. Even now, it's still broken. And so half of this stuff will be tempered as the economy gets back in. I think half the inflation is kind of permanent, but half is supply chain. So I think things are going to be okay. I think inflation in the back end of the year will probably settle back down from 8% down to maybe 5%, which would be good. The Fed's going to raise another 50 basis points twice at least. So we're going to get up to 3, 4% real cost of money, and it'll balance itself out. I don't see a disaster coming because this cycle we are in full employment. We have everybody working. You try and hire somebody right here in New York at a restaurant, forget about it. You can't get anybody to work because they don't want to or they already have a job. So, you know, we're in a funky place right now.
And you got a startup investing platform that allows people to become sharks, and they can invest in new and upcoming companies, right? Start Engine?
Yeah, this is something that came out of the Jobs Act years ago. The government wisely decided, why is it that only really rich people can be involved in venture startups? Like the guys that first invested in Google or in Apple, you know, or in Microsoft. They were traditional venture firms. Why can't we democratize this? And so what they created was an opportunity to do equity crowdfunding. And Start Engine's the biggest of that. So the way this works is you're a company, you're a startup, maybe you're an underserved community, right? And you want access to capital. You tell your story on a startup platform like Start Engine, and hundreds of thousands of investors can make an investment in it, $200, $300, $1,000, whatever they want. They become founding shareholders beside you. And it's done in a really democratic way. There's no preference share. The trouble with venture capital is you want to raise $3 million, they say, okay, we have to be special shareholders. We get our money back first. We have a preference share. We have control over you in ways that no one else has. That sucks. I don't understand why anybody would do that to themselves. And look, I've been involved in venture capital my whole life, and I know how the game works. But bottom line is this is a new way to actually raise capital. Now, it got better just a few months ago when the government said, okay, it used to be the maximum you could raise was $1,070,000. Now, you can raise up to $5 million. And that's very competitive to what traditional hedge funds do, private equity funds do, venture funds. So now Start Engine, which is basically, look, I'll disclose to you, I'm a paid spokesperson, but I'm also a shareholder in it. This thing works. I put my Shark Tank companies on this. So if they want to raise dough, they go out there and say, look, I'm going to raise $2 or $3 or $4 million, and you can have a piece of it right beside me. That matters a lot because you're going to be just like me. We're all equal on this journey together. And Start Engine itself, the engine platform itself, is raising its own money on its own Start Engine. So if you want to be an investor in the platform itself, they're raising around right now another $40 million on their platform.
Yeah, we've had people come up. We've had people come up here and try to crowdfund with Start Engine.
Yeah.
Yeah, like fan base did that.
Fan base did
Yeah, and they got like
you can if you already have customers, if you're selling a product or service and you've got, let's say, 10,000 customers or even 1,000 customers, you can go to them and say, look, I know you're using my product or service. How would you like to be a shareholder beside me? And you're going to find some large percentage say, hey, I'm happy to do that. And frankly, they have a very long-term view. Instead of saying, oh, I'm in a fund that I have to get liquid in 3 years or 5 years, they may stay with it their whole lives. The guy that started this, Howard Marks, came out of Activision. He was one of the co-founders of Activision. He gets the joke. He's been doing this a long time. And so he knows that startups And when you invest in startups, you need diversification. I talked earlier about how you don't want to be too concentrated in any one deal. If you're investing in Start Engine, I recommend you buy 7 or 8 deals. Build a portfolio because you don't know what's going to work.
Do you have to give up equity when if you're on here and you're raising money from Start Engine?
Yeah, of course.
okay.
You're selling shares to shareholders, but you, as the founder, set the price. And you determine what the market wants to do. You tell your shareholders, look, I'm going to do another round. I'm going to raise another $3 million. But at least it's in a way that's very democratic and very diverse, and you get a lot of shareholders. Instead of having one VC shareholder that owns 30% of your company, you get 3,000 people. So that's why they call it equity crowdfunding. You've got a real herd of people that care about your brand.
I was going to ask, you talk about in this music industry that everybody's a workaholic, right? They work hard, they outwork everybody, but you don't necessarily believe or hire workaholics.
No.
Why not?
I don't hire workaholics. I'll tell you why. If you look at, productivity, in other words, great managers, great investors, great entrepreneurs, you're going to find a common trait, and I'll tell you what it is. And I've seen this happen over and over again. Ask that man or woman, what they do with their spare time, if they have any. And you're going to find out it's something in the arts, or it's something in sports, or it's something that has nothing to do with business, because you need the balance in your brain of the yin and the yang, as I call it, between the chaos of the arts and the discipline of business, which is very binary. Either you make money or you lose it. And I found the greatest managers for me are ex-dancers or artists or archers or soccer players, or where they have some discipline in their life that they really struggled with early on. When you start dancing at 4 years old and you're still dancing when you're 32, that's a big deal. You're going in every day and it's in your head, and that makes you very, very effective, and that's what I find. So I'm always asking people, what else do you do? Like, you sound great on paper, but tell me about yourself. If they're a great guitarist or a violinist or a painter, that makes me very interested, because all of the people I work with have some other discipline that they're very good with, and my team is really efficient that way. They still get their job done, but they pursue other things that kind of gives them more productivity in their brains. That's what I think. Yes. And it's look, I'm just doing what works for me. And the other thing that's happened to me over these 14 years on Shark Tank, the majority of my returns have come from companies run by women, 75%. So that's why I tend to invest in women entrepreneurs, because they're very good at mitigating risk. That old adage, you want something done, give it to a busy mother. That's true in business.
I agree 100%. And the discipline that you talk of, I think that's why they're so successful as well. But could you expound on that? Because I love that jewel that you just gave. You said the chaos of the arts. And the what is it?
Think about writing a song, some of the greatest hits ever written. I was listening to this documentary about the Bee Gees, one of the most successful bands in history. There's only one brother left, but he was talking about one day they were on their way to their recording studio in Miami, and this was the time when they were doing Saturday Night Fever, which ended up being one of the biggest albums ever. And there's that, there's a track that has sort of a really funky riff in it. And the reason it happened was the tires were going over the Miami Causeway between metal grate and concrete. So it started to get in a groove, and Barry was listening to it, and he was, just because it was just going over and over and over. And he walked into the studio and said to the drummer, I got this thing in my head. I just got out of the limo. Make this sound for me. And that turned into one of the greatest hits they ever had. Just chaos, right? In a limo, listening to the grate on the wheel, the rubber wheel. That's the kind of thing that gives you productivity in business. Same thing. Something hits your head, came out of the arts, and you apply that. Maybe you're coding, maybe you're doing something else. I think I'm a big believer in that.
Now, on Shark Tank, how often do you invest in somebody who maybe their vision isn't quite there, but you like their personality? Is that something that you would do, or is it strictly business?
No,
maybe you feel like they're charismatic, it could go somewhere, you can see them being a good spokesperson for something, you see the potential. Yeah,
listen, I think it's all about the jockey, because if you think about, particularly this last 2 years, if you didn't know how to pivot, you went out of business. So you have to look at that entrepreneur knowing their business plan is full of shit. They have no idea what's going to happen. And they just don't know. I've never seen a business plan that didn't look terrific, right? Everything's going up to the right. Everybody's numbers are going to go through the roof. But that's not how it works. Shit happens. And you have to be able to deal with it. And that's why you need the arts. You need some other aspect, some other place you can go in your head to solve these problems and figure out what is the path of least resistance to success? Because right now we're in a bear market, and a lot of companies used to have access to cheap capital, don't have that anymore. Now they got to pivot. This is where they're really going to get tested, and I think that's important. It happens every 7-8 years.
Now, you sharks get testy with each other sometimes when you guys are actually like one of the Shark Tank contestants that come up there. So what is something that you missed out on that you still kick yourself out about to this day?
Well, it's Ring. Everybody knows that deal, and we're friends now. But I offered him the $600,000, but he wouldn't take it. I put it out as debt. I was the only shark that believed in him. I would have made about $400 million on that deal.
Goodness gracious.
So that really sucks. But at the same time, he did the right thing for him, and that's okay. Jamie, pretty good guy. And
Pretty good guy.
It was too much equity. Was it too much equity? Was that what it was?
No, the problem was he was burning through so much cash that I knew he'd have to keep raising money and I'd get diluted. So what I said to him was, look, give me 2.5% warrants. That's just my little, that's my little kiss. And I'll give you $600,000 in debt for 3 years at 7%, which I thought was a reasonable offer. He said, I don't want any debt. I said, well, it's my $600,000. Like, I'll take a little bit of equity and you can go raise more. I know I'll get diluted, but at least I'll get my $600,000 back plus 7%, which I thought was very reasonable. He didn't take the deal. But it would have been a great deal for me, and it would have been a good deal for him. But it doesn't matter at this point. That's water under the bridge. There is something I would tell you that I've learned over these years, and it may sound crazy, but it's true. I'm sitting right in front of them when they walk out on the carpet. And what you don't know about the show is that when they step out, the floor director says, okay, stand right there, because they need a jib shot and they need the Steadicam to come over and get a shot of their product with the team standing there. And that takes about 2.5 minutes to get it right. They'll keep shooting until they get it right, but they just have to stand there and can say nothing. And I do this thing where I just look at them. I don't blink. I don't smile. I just look at them. And I watch their body language. And I can tell after about 90 seconds, winner, loser. The ability to present yourself physically without speaking a word, your presence, your aura is a big deal. It's a big deal because you only walk into a room and meet new people once. And they're looking at you, you're looking at them, and it's how you deal with that nervousness, that nervous energy. And I keep doing this. I mean, maybe it's mean of me. I don't think so, though, because I can tell the ones that push back, that have the guts to take the heat, because now there's 26 cameras on them, the lights are on, they've been practicing in front of a mirror for 2 months, but now it's the real deal. And they're in there, and the camera's about to roll, and you can see them sweating bullets there, because even the ones that think they had it nailed are dealing with the reality of being in front of, billions of dollars, an opportunity of a lifetime. The world's going to meet them. Some of them don't make it. Some of them pass right out. You don't see that. But
Do they?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
They just...
How many have passed out? We had to get
Couple.
Really?
Yeah. You know that phenomenon when you're in a drum crew, like drumming on the football field, if you lock your knees for more than 2.5 minutes, you're going to pass out. That's what happened. There was a guy who was 6'4" in front of me, and I could start to see him
dazing off,
nosedive right into the concrete, like unbelievable. And we had to shut that set down. We had to get the medics in there.
Goodness
He was
gracious.
okay. He was okay, no problem. But wow, hey, stuff happens.
Jeez.
How'd you get the name Mr. Wonderful? That's very WWE.
Yeah. We think, and we haven't found the tape, that it might have been Barbara back in season 1 when I made some aggressive deal to somebody, and she didn't like it, and she said, "Well, isn't that just wonderful?" And I said, "Yeah, it is a wonderful deal," and it just kind of stuck, or it could have happened before then. We're not sure. It might have been in a previous show. I don't know, but it's sort of it's amazing because a lot of people don't know my name anymore. They just call me Mr. Wonderful. Like I'll walk in, get picked up by a limo at LAX, and there's a sign saying Mr. Wonderful, and I say to the guy, "Do you know my name?" He says, "No idea, but you are Mr. Wonderful, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." It's kind of weird.
Your tips always pop up in my Google searches. Like it'll be certain things that you say on like CNBC or different conversations you have about finances and money, but they don't call you Mr. Wonderful on there.
Yeah, it's I'm an investor, and I've learned a few things over the years. And I think, and I'm trying to teach my kids how to do this, and others. It's not easy, but there's certain disciplines you learn because everybody makes mistakes. And so I try and say, look, this is how I do it. I'm not sure how you're going to do it, but this is how I do it. I'm all about diversification. I like to mitigate risk, but I also take some big chances on stuff. And sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. And I think financial literacy is a mess in this country. We don't teach anybody anything in high school, which is crazy. We teach them about sex and geography and everything else and history, but we don't tell them what debt is.
Right.
Like, that's nuts. And so Florida, where I'm living, we've got that in the curriculum now. They're talking about it here in New York. Texas and California, that's about 60% of the educational market, the 110,000 school buildings in America. We should be talking about credit card debt day one.
Have you invested in cannabis?
I can't do cannabis because of the Schedule I narcotic issue. So the trouble with cannabis, I've invested in psychedelics. I'm a big holder of a lot of the companies that are doing psychedelics as medicine through FDA trials. But here's the problem with cannabis. It's got to get off the Schedule I narcotic list because if you're in one state where it's legal and you're right beside Florida, for example, where it's not, and you aid and abet the transportation of a Schedule I narcotic over the border, you go to jail for 23 years.
That's right.
I mean, that's crazy.
And it's crazy because President Biden said he was going to decriminalize, marijuana.
I think he's got caught up in a few other issues now. I mean,
you think?
Just a little bit. And the fact that, because it is, banks won't take the money.
The whole thing's nuts. And so you got to standardize the policy. It would have been better for the industry to go and say, look, we're going to take it in as a medicine. That way you could have got institutional investors to support it. Right now, the fact that it's a rogue product in some places, legal in others, I mean, it's chaos.
It is.
And I think that's got to get cleaned up. I mean, other countries have just basically made it legal with all kinds of rules and regulations. But, I warn investors about cannabis. It's a commodity, okay? It's a weed. The best place to grow it is at the equator where you get 5 crops, not up in northern, not in New York. That's dumb. It's very expensive to make it there. So it's really going to shake itself out as it becomes legal. And I think edibles and consumables may work, but it's got to be legal. I mean, I'm in the wine business, and we've been looking at, cannabis-infused beverages for a while, but we can't get around the RICO statute issue.
If you like that video, wait till you see my next one. Don't forget to click right over here and subscribe.